Coming in at number 5, we have the Queen Anne Hotel in San Francisco. The Queen Anne Hotel was originally an exclusive girls' boarding school built in 1980. This building is said to be haunted by the spirit of the old headmaster. The building was reportedly sold against the headmaster's wishes. It is said her spirit is still attached to room 410, which was her old office. Guests have reported that her ghost seems to be a very caring soul. Hauntings have included unpacking suitcases, tucking guests in, and even singing them to sleep, which sounds terrifying. One guest even reported waking up on the floor with their bedding neatly tucked around them. Not every ghost in the hotel is as warm as caring as the headmistress though. The building was previously used for various secret societies. They would meet here with their members who reportedly had something to do with astrology. Could they have been messing with the paranormal? People have reported suddenly feeling very cold in certain spots in the house. They feel like they're being watched, with others catching strange reflections in the mirror. So not all of the Queen Anne's ghosts are bad, but is it really worth the risk for the headmistress to tuck you in at night? I mean, I don't really want anyone tucking me in at night, dead or alive. A little bit weird. In at number 4, Hotel Provincial in Louisiana. The Hotel Provincial, located in New Orleans, Louisiana, is said to be haunted by the spirit of a former soldier. The hotel has a beautiful French design and boasts about their historical heritage to the land. It turns out the hotel is built over an old military hospital from 1722. In 1831, twin houses were then built on the site, but they both burned down in 1874. There have been many guests who have reported hauntings of the soldier in many different forms. Some hear doors opening and closing on their own, or footsteps walking the halls at night. Several seances have actually been performed at the hotel over the years, many of which resulted in ghostly visions or recorded audio of a voice saying, "Tell Diane I have to go." There was even a female guest who reported being pulled from her bed by her hand across the room as she kicked and screamed. Although not everyone has an encounter with the soldier, it's enough to keep me from booking a room.
Number 3 on this list is the Pfister Hotel. This one has been around for a while and has got a lot of people scared who've stayed here. Travel and Leisure says the historic Pfister Hotel opened in Milwaukee in 1893 with elegant interiors and advanced technology for the times, including electricity, individual thermostat controls, and fireproofing, making it one of the most sought-after accommodations in the city. The hotel is supposedly home to a number of spooky sightings. In fact, several MLB players have reported their own personal ghost experiences in the hotel, and some are even too scared to stay there again. So guys, I actually run a podcast all about the MLB. Because I run this podcast, I'm pretty knowledgeable about the MLB. I have literally heard of this hotel before even doing research on this video. Players will flat out refuse to play here now cause they get way too scared and can't get any sleep when they're there. Then obviously when they play their game the next day, they suck because they just spent the entire night basically fending for their lives in this haunted hotel. It's really too bad that it has to be this way because this is apparently one of the nicer hotels in Milwaukee. It's definitely one of the oldest, and back then it was the best place to stay if you wanted a luxurious night. Hopefully the ghosts that reside here eventually leave and we can all enjoy it once again without getting completely haunted. Number 2 on this list is the Emily Morgan Hotel. The Emily Morgan Hotel is located in Texas and is probably the most haunted in that entire state. It wasn't always the lovely and renovated hotel that it is today. Prior to this being a beautiful place to stay, this was actually a hospital and a place for doctors to stay. Obviously, during that period, it saw a lot of illness and death, and that has tainted the space. But believe it or not though, this isn't the only set of tragedies that this location has seen. Before it was a hospital, before it was anything at all, on this very site where the hotel currently sits was the Battle of the Alamo. The Battle of the Alamo was one of the most critical battles in the Texas Revolution. The battle lasted for 13 brutal days in 1836. It was between the Mexican soldiers and the Texan soldiers. The Mexican soldiers won out and killed every single one of the Texan soldiers who were there defending their fort. This battle is one of the most famous in American history for how horrible and brutal it was. It's no wonder that the land here is haunted and will infect basically anything that's built here. It also doesn't help when the hotel used to be a hospital which saw its fair share of horrible things too. Nowadays, this hotel has a whole cast of paranormal characters. Soldiers from back in the day have been spotted roaming around the halls, and patients and doctors as well. There have even been a few occasions where people have reported having visions of being on the battlefield as if they were transported there. Definitely not the spot to be staying on your vacay to Texas. And finally, number 1 on this list is La Fonda on the Plaza. This is a hotel located in New Mexico that has been host to plenty of tragedies. Travel and Leisure says this beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico hotel has an incredibly rich history. Since 1609, a number of inns have been located on this very site, but a handful of events may be the cause of continued hauntings. According to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the ghosts of a judge shot in the lobby, a businessman who gambled everything away at the hotel before jumping down a well, and a bride killed on her wedding night are just a few of the spirits that you may come across during your stay here. That's 3 spirits too many for me, guys. Whenever situations like this arise, I start to question things. What I mean is that, isn't this a little bit odd that 3 totally separate, completely different tragic events all took place right here at different times? Sure, it could be a coincidence, but it seems like a rather sad one if you ask me. Maybe there was always something about this space that was just a little off. Maybe people who come here just get hit with horrible luck. Maybe this hotel was built on some sort of ancient ground that it shouldn't have been built on, and this is the horrible reaction. I obviously can't say for sure, but something's fishy about this hotel, and I wouldn't recommend checking it out if I was you.
In at number 5 we have James Bay Inn in Victoria, British Columbia. The James Bay Inn opened in 1911 and is the 3rd oldest hotel in Victoria. The hotel has continued to operate, only closing briefly during the war. The hotel was built so that every room has a view outside and access to fresh air. This was the most important thing to the architects. The hotel bought enough land that there is nothing blocking guests' view. In 1942 the hotel was purchased by the Mother Cecilia's religious order. From then until 1945 the hotel was run as St. Mary's Priory. During this time the building had its most famous visitor, the Canadian painter Emily Carr. The Canadian painter Emily Carr was a patient at the Priory during her illness. It was here that she spent her final days and finally succumbed to her illness. Many believe that her spirit did not pass on. It could have been that she has unfinished business, a painting she had yet to finish. In the final days before she died, she was made aware she was to be awarded an achievement for her life's work, an award she did not live to see. The room that was used for the sick in 1945 has since been refurbished a number of times. It is now a men's room leading off from the pub. It is believed that her spirit is unhappy that where she had her final moments has been turned into a restroom. There are reports that she likes to play around with the ghost. She will call the phones in the rooms at night. When answered, no one is there. She has also been seen to appear at the end of the beds watching people sleep at night. She was also once seen in a mirror of the washroom. The scared guest told others, but no one else saw her on investigation. In at number 4 we have Fairmont Royal York in Toronto. Opened in 1929 by Canadian Pacific Hotels, the Fairmont Royal York in Toronto has been a member of Historic Hotels Worldwide since 2017. When it first opened, the hotel was the tallest structure in the entire British Empire. Within a year, the demand for the hotel grew so much the hotel already had its first renovations to add more rooms. Like most other hotels around that time, the hotel was designed as a chateau and Art Deco style architecture. This hotel has also hosted royal family members King George IV and Queen Elizabeth during their royal visit to Canada. The hotel is believed to have at least 4 ghosts who like to walk the halls of the historic hotel. An author named John Robert Colombo wrote the book Mysteries of Ontario. In the book he mentioned a ghost that he came across during his stay at the Fairmont Hotel. According to the book, he saw an apparition of a man. He said he was a grey-haired man in a maroon jacket. He saw the man in the hallway of the 8th floor. Others have also reported seeing the man in different areas of the hotel. There is another story about a young woman who used to work at the hotel. The former employee once went missing during her shift. When she was finally found, it was too late. The woman had taken her life and was hanging from the stairwell railing above the 19th floor. The reason why she did this was never discovered. Since then, staff have heard strange scrapings and screams coming from that area of the hotel. If anyone dares to investigate the noises, they stop. Guests have also come into contact with her ghost on the 8th floor, claiming they felt the presence of someone, like they were being followed. As mentioned before, there are believed to be more ghosts in the hotel, Hotel. The hotel is so grand in size that hauntings have occurred randomly over many floors. One electrician claimed he often feels cold spots when working on the hotel with no reason as to why. In at number 3, the Swan Hotel in Suffolk. This luxury 4-star hotel is set in the middle of the historic Tudor town of Langham. In the heart of Suffolk, its oak-beamed interior makes for a cozy feel, giving guests a sense of stepping back in time. It's said that a housekeeper who once lived there back when the hotel was a thriving coaching inn back in the 19th century fell pregnant out of wedlock. The baby's father was happy to marry the lady under the circumstances and promised to look after them both. However, on the wedding day the gentleman had second thoughts and left the pregnant lady standing at the altar. Savage. It is said that after that she became inconsolable and very depressed. What is now room 15 in the Swan Hotel was once the housekeeping quarters, and it is said that the poor woman was found hanging in this room by one of the inn's workers. Her ghost remains behind to chill the spines of those that dared to cross her path. A security guard was working alone late one night at the Swan Hotel, and as he was doing his final checks around the hotel, he came into contact with her, which scared him out of his wits and sent him running in the other direction. Several guests have reported having seen her standing in room 15 in the middle of the night. Once a nun was staying in that very room when she awoke, startled to feel the ghost tickling her feet. I guess you either get lucky and she likes you, or she chooses to scare you half to death. In at number 2 we have the Langham in London. One of the more upmarket entries on this list is the Langham in London. I know it's upmarket because Cher stayed there. How do I know? Because I stalk her life. Since opening in 1865, this 5-star hotel has played host to a number of infamous historical figures, both living and dead. With nearly 500 rooms and suites, it's really not surprising that a number of ghosts have been seen regularly at the hotel. The paranormal activity at the hotel became apparent when it was owned by the BBC, when it was discovered that there were at least 5 ghosts that make regular appearances at the hotel. The most active of the ghosts at the hotel is said to be that of a German prince or nobleman who was thought to have met his death when he threw himself out of the window of an upper story room. Ghosts have seen his ghostly form moving through walls and closed doors, and he is often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature. Room 333 is supposed to be the most haunted. In this room, a BBC newscaster woke up to see a fluorescent ball of light which slowly took a human shape. The apparition hovered 2 feet above the floor, the lower portion of its legs missing. It was dressed in extravagant Victorian evening wear. The announcer tried to communicate with the ghost, asking what it wanted. The spirit slowly started to move towards the newscaster, arms outstretched, eyes empty. The announcer fled in distress to the safety of his co-workers and told them of this encounter. A colleague accompanied him back to his room. The ghost was still there when they entered, but appeared less visible and less threatening before slowly fading away. Other BBC staff reported seeing the apparition in the same room, though only in October. There have been reports from other famous guests that taps will turn on in the night and turn off when investigated. Many people often struggle to sleep here and have to move rooms or even hotels. And finally, in at number 1 we have Malmaison in Oxford. This hotel is the most unique on this list. It was once a large prison located in Oxford. They have converted each cell into a hotel room. They have 95 rooms from you to choose from, starting with standard double house of correction to signature suite that is a 2-story of cells converted to a loft-style room. Oxford Castle functioned as Her Majesty's Prison Oxford from 1888 to 1996. One of the more notable prisoners to be held in Oxford Castle was Mary Blandy, an 18th century murderer who poisoned her father with arsenic. She believed the arsenic was a love potion that would force him to approve of her fiancé, a Scottish nobleman who was already married. She was hanged on April 6, 1752. It's said that her spirit still roams the castle to this day. During the Victorian era, it wasn't uncommon for children to be imprisoned inside. The youngest inmate to be held inside Oxford Prison was Julie Ann Crumpling. She was just 7 years old when she was sentenced to 7 days of hard labour for allegedly stealing a pram. Perhaps the most terrifying report comes from one of the security guards who was on his nightly patrol. The security has long been very wary of the location and had experienced several things before such an unexplained sounds, bangs, and the usual phenomena. However, on one dark night when the guards was coming to an end of his patrol, when his dog stopped and shuffled quickly backwards, growling at something in front of him. It was then 2 large shadow figures appeared before him. As anyone would do, he ran as fast as he could. A few days later, his dog died suddenly. He believed he had been frightened to death. You can stay in rooms when prisoners were once tortured and even killed. Although the hotel has been fitted to be a rather comfortable boutique hotel, it does not erase the horrors that have occurred. Sometime in the 1970s, a group were carrying out a sentence in one of the cells when poltergeist activity suddenly erupted. Things got so bad that a priest had to be called to exorcise whatever they had awoken. Would you dare stay here? I wouldn't, although maybe, we'll see. Coming in at number 5, Hotel MyStays Premier Akasaka in Tokyo. The MyStays Premier Akasaka was built on the site of the Akasaka Weekly Mansion. Since opening, the hotel has been linked to countless cases of people taking their own lives and sudden deaths that have reportedly taken place at the former building. Since then, it is a common occurrence for guests to experience the paranormal. One of the most common claims is that an eerie, white mist can be seen filling the rooms. No one knows where it comes from or why, but it can disappear as fast as it appears. There are also often reports of a woman appearing in some of the rooms. She has been seen in doorways or even at the foot of the bed. Guests have reported a cold hand stroking their hair or grabbing them while inside of their room. One woman was even dragged by her hair across her room. Electronical items also appear to stop working while within the hotel, with some turning off and on mysteriously, then working normally again upon leaving the hotel. It seems like you'd be safe choosing another hotel in this area. I would not like to be dragged across my room while trying to enjoy my holiday. Coming in at number 4, we have Bourbon Orleans Hotel in New Orleans. When it opened in 1819, the Orleans Theatre and Ballroom became the setting for European operas and entertainment for Creole society in New Orleans. The 1,300-seat theatre quickly placed New Orleans on the map as the opera capital of the United States throughout the 19th century. By 1881, both the Orleans Theatre and Ballroom had been acquired by the Sisters of the Holy Family for use as a school, orphanage, and convent. The Sisters of the Holy Family were at the location for 83 years until the need for expansion pressed them to sell the property to hotel interests. The stories of the ghosts in the hotel seem to spread over each era of the hotel's history. There is something about the ground the hotel is built on that seems to keep spirits locked there. There is the story of the Confederate soldier. He is known around the hotel simply as the Man. He has been known to haunt both the 6th and 3rd floors. Many people have seen him standing around on these floors, and sometimes his footsteps can be heard walking around. A yellow fever hit New Orleans around the time that the nuns were running their convent. They cared for sick children who had been orphaned. Due to this, there are spirits of nuns and little girls who have been seen around the hotel. The most frequently told tale is of a little girl. You can hear her light footsteps walking around from time to time, and some have even seen her rolling her ball and chasing it down the 6th floor corridors. The final well-known ghost to inhabit the Bourbon is that of the Lonely Dancer. She has been seen dancing underneath the ballroom's crystal chandelier. Others have commented on how they could see someone stood behind the curtains within the ballroom, yet when they look to see who is hiding, no one is there. Seems she wants to be included in the lavish events, but must only watch from afar. In at number 3, we have the Fairmont Chateau Laurier in Ottawa. The Fairmont Chateau was originally commissioned to be built in the early 1900s by Charles Melville Hayes. Charles was the president of the Grand Trunk Railway. He began his career with the company when he was just 17 as a clerk. He soon worked his way up the ranks within the company. It was his idea to build a transcontinental railroad within Canada from Moncton to British Columbia. He was an ambitious man, but often promised more than he could actually achieve. This often led him to upsetting people and causing repercussions for his company. He was even called heartless, cruel, and tyrannical by one member of the parliament. His hotel was due to open in 1912 after he returned to Canada after a short trip to London to sort out some of his business problems. The gala opening for his hotel was planned for April 25th. That's my sister's birthday. Just so you all know. He bought a ticket to travel back on the 10th of April after hearing his daughter back home was struggling with her pregnancy. He was due to arrive in New York on April 17th in order to make the gala. Unfortunately, Charles, along with his wife and staff, were on board the RMS Titanic. Charles is said to have helped the woman in his family safely get to the boats, but he himself would not make the trip. He was brought back to Canada to be laid to rest. His hotel did open after a amount of time to mourn his passing. Although he was not there when the hotel opened, it is rumored his spirit still remains within the walls. Likely his spirit felt it had some unfinished business, having died so suddenly and tragically. One visitor from 2008 stated that the hotel was definitely haunted. She claimed her floor in particular was haunted, and she felt incredibly scared during her visit. Taps would turn themselves on mysteriously, as well as footsteps in the hallway. She did also state it would not stop her from visiting again though. Maybe the beautiful castle is worth a scare. In at number 2 we have the Banff Springs Hotel in Alberta. The Fairmont Banff Springs, formerly known as the Banff Springs Hotel, is a historic hotel in Banff, Alberta. William Cornelius Van Horn, another founder of the railroad, had the idea to build a hotel on the land. When construction began of the railroad in this area, they stumbled across several mineral springs. Seeing the great opportunity, William commissioned a grand hotel be built at the location. Construction started and they relied heavily on Chateau-esque style architecture for inspiration. After 2 years of construction, the Banff Springs Hotel opened its doors in 1886. quickly became known as one of the top 3 mountain resorts in North America. Its great reputation stands to this day. It has hosted historical figures such as King George VI and his wife Queen Elizabeth. The hotel is now open for over 130 years. A lot of guests have visited in that time, and it is believed that not all of them may have left. One story that has always been told between guests is one of the ghost bride. The story goes that her and her fiance had booked in for a lavish wedding at the hotel. They had their entire family booked into the hotel, and it was looking to be a beautiful celebration of their love. On the morning of their wedding, she got into her dress and prepared herself for the big day. Unknowing to her, what came next was tragic. She wanted to make an entrance into the wedding and decided to descend down one of the marble staircases. She slipped on her dress and frantically reached for something to stop her. She fell a great height to the bottom of the stairs, in front of all the guests and her fiance. They watched in horror, unable to do anything. They rushed to her aid, but it was too late. She was already gone. The wedding party had to leave the hotel and attempt to move on from the tragedy, but the bride could not. Her soul was trapped inside of the hotel. It is said she now spends her days walking down the same staircase, hoping to reach the bottom and greet her loved ones, but she never will. This is a common sighting for guests of the hotel. You can feel a chill run down you if you walk those steps today. Some guests have even heard crying echoes across the marble floors, unable to see what might be causing it. Maybe one day she will find peace in the afterlife, but right now she continues to haunt the halls of the hotel. And finally, in at number 1, we have the Fort Garry Hotel in Winnipeg. The Fort Garry Hotel is located in downtown Winnipeg. It opened for the first time on December 11, 1913, and once again has links to the railway. It's one of many hotels owned by Canada's Grand Railway Hotel. It has been designated as a National Historic Site of Canada due to its long history. Any hotel that has been open as long as this one is bound to have some ghosts sticking around. The most haunted room in the hotel seems to be room 202. Many years ago, a woman and her husband checked into the hotel for their visit to Winnipeg. It is said that the husband had left to run an errand, leaving his wife at the hotel for a short time. When he didn't return for hours, the wife became worried. She then got a call from the police that he had been involved in a car accident. He did not survive the crash. Stricken with grief, the woman spent many days in the room locked away. She then decided to take her own life as she could not go on without her husband. Since then, the room is said to hold her angry spirit. Both staff and guests have made similar reports of seeing blood dripping from the walls. One woman claimed that during her stay in the room she was awoken twice by the feeling of someone getting into bed with her. The ghost is not only confined to the room, others have seen her in the hotel lounge, sat in a corner dressed in all black, crying over her lost love. She's not the only ghost at the Fort Garry Hotel though, simply the only one who can be identified. There are also reports of a man. He has been seen at the foot of guests' bed while they sleep. When they awake to confront the intruder, he disappears. One employee once entered the dining hall and saw a man sat at one of the tables. He called to the man that he would have to leave. He went to get help, but when he returned, the man was gone. Coming in at number 5, we have Castle Stuart. Magnificently situated on the Moray Firth near Inverness, the 5-star Castle Stuart is a sight to behold. A mere 7 miles from the heart of Inverness, Castle Stuart is an ideally located base from which to explore the scenic and historic Highlands of Scotland. Walk the battlements with the ghost of Charles I before he lost his kingdom and his head, or with Bonnie Prince Charlie the night before his tragic defeat at nearby Culloden Moor. The property was held by the Macintoshes but was given by Mary, Queen of Scots, to James Stuart, Earl of Moray. Moray was made regent for James VI but was later assassinated. During the time that Stuart lived in the castle for an unknown reason, local residents began to spread the rumour that the castle was haunted. To disprove the theory, James Stuart offered a reward to anyone willing to spend a night in the castle. A local minister accepted the challenge and stayed in a room at the top of the East Tower. Stuart was hopeful that once the minister told the people that the tower was not haunted, the word of the castle being haunted would not spread. The next morning, however, he was found dead in the courtyard with a look of terror on his face. It was never explained what had happened to him and no killer was ever found. At some point in the night he had either jumped from the window of the tower or he had been pushed. This only cemented the fear that the castle was in fact cursed. From that day the locals refused to enter the castle grounds. It lay dormant for around 300 years until it was refurbished and turned into the hotel that we know today. Guests who have stayed there since it reopened have experienced a number of hauntings. Staff have heard disembodied footsteps on the stairs at midnight, horrible screams, and the ghost of a headless man was seen prowling the corridors. Some people have seen a figure pass their window too fast for them to make sense of it, but caught a glimpse in their eye as if someone had fallen from the tower above. The reviews of the hotel prove that guests are convinced the hauntings are real, but they also claim to have enjoyed the stay. If you like being terrified by ancient spirits or tormented by lost souls, this might be the place for you. In at number 4 we have Chillingham Castle in Chillingham. Chillingham Castle is a 13th century stronghold famed for action and battles. With its fine rooms, gardens, lakes, fountains and tea rooms, the castle has an extraordinary ownership bloodline which runs back to the 1200s. Chillingham occupied a strategic position during Northumberland's bloody border feuds. Chillingham Castle was often under attack and often basked in the patronage of royal visitors, a tradition that remains to this day. Edward VIII came to hunt there, and members of today's royal family continue the tradition with private visits to the castle this century. The medieval castle remains as it was, just with galleries that you can see today added in Tudor days. For the visit of King James VI of Scotland, the castle is a dark past at the hands of the once owner John Sage. Once injured, he could no longer fight for the king. He begged to be kept on in some capacity. He was given the job of torturer and stepped into his new role with relish. It was said that he had a deep hatred for the Scots and little mercy, with over 7,500 men, women and children suffering an agonizing end at his hands. Often legs and arms were broken before they were thrown 20 feet down into the oubliette. With no way to escape, they were to eventually starve and pass away in pain and in fear. It was also said that John Sage met with an equally gruesome death after he accidentally killed a tribesman's daughter that he had been in love with. The father exacted his revenge and John was executed at Chillingham, with parts of his body being taken as souvenirs, a fitting end to a life dedicated to such cruelty. One of the most famous ghosts is the ghost of the Blue Boy, often witnessed by flashes of blue light or halo. These sightings settled down when two skeletons, one of a man and the other a young boy, were uncovered during renovation work. They even found documents with the remains dating back to the Armada. Who they were and why they were hidden remains a mystery. Some of the smaller hauntings guests reported including footsteps being heard walking around the rooms and the taps turning on by themselves. Another common sighting includes those of the Lady in White, who, after suffering from being poisoned, begged guests for water in the pantry. These are just a couple of the ghosts and hauntings around the castle. If you're brave enough to investigate, you might find a few more. In at number 3 we have Holmes Murder Castle in Chicago. Luckily this is not a hotel you can visit any longer, but it is still a cautionary tale, so do your research before booking to stay anywhere. Herman Mudgett, who went by the name Dr. Holmes, built and operated his 60-room hotel in the Chicago suburbs in the late 1800s. He was the architect for this hotel and had a very clear vision of what he wanted. The castle included a lot of strange features: rooms with no windows, doors that didn't go anywhere, trapdoors and even hidden passageways. When he opened for business, the unlucky visitors got more than they bargained for. Dr. Holmes went on to be known as the United States' first serial killer. For 4 years he held the visitors prisoner, torturing and killing them. He admitted to 28 murders, but they suspect he was responsible for many more. Some rooms were sealed shut and used as gas asphyxiation chambers, others were lined with iron plates and had blowtorches built into the walls to burn the victims. He was eventually arrested for insurance fraud of all things. The murders were revealed when investigators searched the hotel. They found surgical rooms covered in blood, jars filled with bones, prison rooms fitted with alarms in case anyone tried to escape, and chutes attached to his rooms to directly dump the bodies in the basement. He even had his own crematorium, vats of acid and 2 lime pits that could dissolve a body in a matter of hours. Once he was hung for his crimes, his hotel was burned to the ground to prevent this from happening to any more travelling souls. So just because you find a good deal on TripAdvisor, do your research before booking. Although we do all love a good deal. In at number 2, Crescent Hotel in Arkansas. The Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas was the first luxury spa in southern United States. Built in 1886, it was also doomed to be a haunted attraction. The entire town is known to have ghosts roaming, but they seem to be especially attracted to the Crescent. In particular, you will want to avoid room 218. The legend goes that a stonemason fell to his death in the area that is now room 218. No one knows the stonemason's name, but hotel employees call him Michael. Those who have stayed in room 218 have reported many weird interactions with his ghost. He has been heard screaming in terror from the ceiling above the bed. Someone even claimed they saw him in the room mirror attempting to reach out into the room. However, Michael is not the only ghost haunting Crescent. The hotel was also a cancer hospital in the 1930s. Guests have reported seeing nurses moving corpses on a gurney between the halls. There have also been sightings of Dr. Ellis, a cancer surgeon, as well hotel is the Lady in White, a woman in a flowing gown who floats through the gardens and perches on balconies. You might think all of these hauntings might be bad for business, but the hotel remains a big tourist attraction as well as a major stop in the local ghost tours. And finally, in at number 1 we have Hotel Galvez in Galveston, Texas. The Hotel Galvez in Texas has seen a lot of death and misfortune. It may look like a beautiful luxury hotel and spa, but having been built around 110 years ago, its history is hard to shake. A hurricane hit Galveston, Texas in 1900, killing thousands and destroying the town, including the candy store that once stood where the hotel is now located. The hotel opened in 1911 in efforts to rebuild the town. It was reported that while restoration was taking place, many bodies were discovered and disturbed and ghosts reawakened. There are many different reports of different types of ghosts from around the hotel. Children can be heard playing and laughing lower down in the hotel near the restrooms. They could have once played here before the candy store was destroyed, and their spirits like the familiarity with the location. If you ask the staff of the hotel, they too have their own stories and interactions with the spirits. One known ghost is the love-torn lady who haunts the 5th floor. It is said that she lost the love of her life at sea. Stricken with grief, she hanged herself from the top turrets of the hotel. Her love later returned from the sea, much to everyone's surprise, only to find what his beloved had done in her grief. She now walks the halls in her sorrow. It is said when she wants to be left alone, she will disable the electronic keys for the floor, and those around can feel a cold presence that is not common for the area. This is just one of the many haunted buildings in the area. Will you be taking a haunted tour around Galveston, Texas? I unlikely will, because I've got no desire to go to Texas, to be honest. Nothing for me there. Coming in at number 5 we have Clown Motel in Nevada. In the 5th spot is the motel that's horrifying for so many reasons, hauntings aside. If you're afraid of clowns, like most people, I highly suggest you steer clear from this place. Located in Nevada, the Clown Motel is home to over 600 creepy clowns. To make matters worse, the motel's neighbor is of course a cemetery. Why not? It may look like it's straight out of a horror film, but don't worry, the Clown Motel only displays happy-looking clowns, as if that's any better. Aside from the clowns, the motel has wood paneling on the walls reminiscent of the 1970s, and bedrooms with outdated bedding. For some reason, that makes it creepier. Next door is the Old Tonopah Cemetery, where the hotel's haunting is said to come from. Over 300 people were laid to rest there, some dying from suicide, murder, the Belmont mine fire, and a plague that cursed the area in 1902. The cause of it all is still unknown. Ghost adventurers visited the location in 2017 and caused a boom in popularity. The property was recently sold, and the new owners are carrying on with the theme, constantly adding new clowns to the motel's collection. Coming in at number 4 we have Langham Hotel, London. This historic hotel opened its doors in 1865, and in came many famous patrons over the years like Mark Twain, Oscar Wilde, and Winston Churchill. It's also said to be incredibly haunted, and given the age, it makes sense. A number of ghosts are known to frequent the property, one being a German prince. Story goes that the man plunged to his death by jumping out of a window before the start of World War I. He can be seen in his military uniform lingering around the 4th floor window. There's said to be a doctor who murdered his wife before killing himself while on their honeymoon. Legend also says that the Emperor Napoleon III spent his last days at the Langham Hotel and can now be spotted roaming the halls. Like most haunted hotels, there's always one room that's plagued the most by paranormal activity. At the Langham Hotel, that room is 333. Can we just talk about the fact that 333 times 2 is 666? Coincidence? I think that's a reach. The most common spectre spotting happens in the room by a man in Victorian era clothes. Also, Cher stayed at that hotel once, I remember, because I saw the paparazzi shots on the Daily Mail website. Coming in at number 3 we have Ballygally Castle in Northern Ireland. The stunning Ballygally Castle was built back in 1625 and is steeped in history. The original castle served as a place of refuge for the Protestants during the Civil Wars. During that time it was handed down from fathers to sons, and in 1799 it was passed to William Shaw, the last squire of Ballygally. In the early 1800s the Shaw family lost their wealth and the estate was sold. The castle sits on a beach beach in Northern Ireland. It has apparently been dubbed the jewel in the Hastings crown. It is reported that while William Shaw and his family lived in the castle, a lot of sinister things happened. William Shaw was driven mad, desperate for his wife to give him a male heir to carry on his legacy. When Lady Shaw did not deliver him a son, he locked her up in a tower at the top of the castle. There are two stories about what happened next. One claims that Lady Shaw fell to her death while attempting to escape, while the second goes that William pushed her from the tower. I am tempted to believe the second personally, since then it is said that over 400-year-old ghost still roams the grounds, looking for her beloved children who she was separated from. She has her own dedicated room at the hotel to try and contain the hauntings, but there have still been hauntings with guests. She has been seen wandering the grounds late at night, others have heard her crying from within their room or feeling a presence is watching over them. This is not a hotel you should visit with your children. If she mistakes you for one of her lost girls, there's no telling what she might do. Coming in at number 2, the Hay Adams, Washington, D.C. The Hay Adams Hotel is only 1,000 feet from the White House and known as the closest you can get to the White House without an invite. The hotel is located on the site where the 1885 homes of John Hay and Henry Adams once stood. In 1927, a property developer bulldozed the homes to build a 138-room residential hotel. Hotel magnate Julius Manger purchased the property in 1932 and changed the name to the Manger Hay Adams Hotel. He owned the hotel until his death. Manger died in this residential suite within the hotel. The ornate ceiling was the last thing he saw. This is not the first death on the land that the Hay Adams stands on. Adams' wife Marion Hooper Adams took her own life on the site in 1885. In a fit of grief, Henry Adams destroyed all of Marion's things, including her photographs and papers. It is believed by many that Henry had a mistress, and maybe that contributed to Marion's depression. Henry and Marion are buried together under a monument called Grief. Staff of the Hay Adams Hotel complained that the ghost of Clover is most active during early December, the anniversary of her death. Reports of doors mysteriously opening and closing on their own, a woman crying softly, and voices of sorrow coming from apparently nowhere. Some housekeepers have also experienced being hugged by an unseen presence. The hauntings do not stop it from being the most popular hotel in Washington and has hosted many a politician, including the Obamas, before inauguration. Just be aware, if you do stop by, you might get a hug from the spirit of Mrs. Adams. And finally, in at number 1, we have the Marshall House in Savannah. The Marshall House was opened in 1951 by Mary L. Marshall on Broughton Street in Savannah's premier shopping district. It is the oldest hotel in the area, being one of the only houses specifically built to be a hotel. It is a beautiful hotel considered by architectural historians to be the finest structure Mary Marshall ever built. Although it started as a beautiful structure and still is to this day, it has had its share of death and horror. During the Civil War, the Marshall House was occupied by the Union and used as a hospital until the end of the war. It was also used twice more as a hospital during the yellow fever epidemics of the 19th century. When it came to restoring the house in the late 1900s, they discovered human remains under the floorboards. The house became a crime scene, but they soon discovered that the downstairs room was used as the hospital surgery room. It is believed that the remains of limbs that had been amputated during the war were discarded underneath the house. Since the bones were disturbed there have been numerous claims of hauntings within the home. Paranormal activity is a frequent occurrence around the hotel to this day. If you choose to stay there, you might notice the faucets turning on and off, lights that inexplicably flicker, electronic items powering themselves, toilets suddenly overflowing for no apparent reason, and disembodied voices that echo throughout the halls. One guest recalled, "A room to be wary of, 306. The loud hall noises in the middle of the night happened on the 4th floor where we just happened to be staying. I've lived in many haunted houses, but Marshall House creeped me out completely. I loved it there, but I could not rest. Yes, it is old and noisy, but there's way more going on there than meets the eye. But what else can you really expect from a city built on top of dead bodies? If you want to sleep through the night, Marshall House is not the hotel for you."
Number 5 on this list is the Hay Adams Hotel. This hotel is located in Washington, D.C. and has quite the history to it. USA Today writes, "Quite possibly the most famous hotel in the capital, the Hay Adams has hosted many a politician, including the Obamas before inauguration. In 1884, best friends John Hay, Abraham Lincoln's private secretary and later a Secretary of State, and Henry Adams, the author and descendant of John Quincy, built their homes on the plot of land where the hotel now sits. In 1927, 9 years after Adams' death, the houses were razed and replaced by the hotel that stands today. Adams' wife, Marion Hooper Adams, killed herself on the site in 1885, and her spirit reportedly haunts the hotel. Guests and staff say they can hear a woman crying softly, disembodied voices, and doors opening and closing on their own. What is it about hotels and people taking their own lives? It feels like so many hotels are haunted because someone left the world far too early, and usually it was their decision to do so. Marion Hooper Adams is no exception, and she has made this hotel a very inhospitable place to stay. Sometimes you hear the faint cries of a creature or spirit and they go away, but apparently her spirit absolutely wails. All the time there are screams and crying heard. In fact, it's so repetitive that it gets less scary and more of an annoyance than anything else. People literally just can't sleep at night because they're constantly listening to her crying over how her life ended. It's also a nuisance when they find things missing all the time. Marion likes to move things and steal items. Oftentimes, the valuables of these people are gone if they leave the hotel for an extended period of time and then come back. Now, maybe this part of the legend is actually just one of the hotel workers stealing stuff and blaming it on her, but either way, things will go missing if you stay here. It's overall just a horrible experience being at this hotel for an extended period of time, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Number 4 on this list is Hotel Provincial. Located in New Orleans, this hotel is teeming with paranormal energy. USA Today says the 2-story Hotel Provincial with 94 rooms in the historic French Quarter is a retreat into old New Orleans. Like many New Orleans properties, it also claims to be a popular paranormal activity hub. Like other area hotels, the property acted as a medical facility for wounded Confederate soldiers and is said to still possess their spirits. From distressed soldiers and operating doctors to pools of blood, guests have reported it all. If actually staying at the property seems too spooky, it's also a stop on many walking ghost tours of the city as well. Pools of blood, guys. Literal pools of blood. Just imagine walking into your hotel room after a long day of doing stuff, getting in your PJs, moving the comforter over to your bed to slip in, and then seeing a bunch of blood just ooze out. This has actually happened to people before. That would absolutely scar me for life if something like that ever went down. Not to mention people actually getting physically scarred when they come here. People have reported getting attacked by unknown paranormal entities while staying here. Waking up to a spirit completely ravaging them and having no idea how or why it's happening. This is not the type of hotel that you want to stay at, and you will literally risk your safety if you do.
In at number 3, we have Emily Morgan Hotel in San Antonio. Before the building was built, the grounds of what is now the hotel was where the Mexican forces battled the Texans in the long barracks of the Alamo in 1836. Over 600 men lost their lives on the land that the hotel now lives on. When originally built, the location was the medical arts building. It housed over 100 medical professionals from doctors to dentists. It was even believed to have a section devoted to the care of those suffering from psychological conditions. The building also had a morgue and crematorium, providing for patients and their family from birth to end of life. Of course, with any old building that has witnessed death, the stories about what happened here continue to grow and interest those who visit. The staff and guests of the hotel have shared their stories about weird occurrences at the hotel. These moments of weirdness have led some to conclude the hotel is haunted. One example of this is the phone ringing in the middle of the night. Once answered, no one is there. Room attendants have also told stories of them cleaning the room, then once they go to clean the bathroom, they will re-enter the room to see that the bedding has been thrown around the room. That sucks. Guests have also reported unusual occurrences during their stays. Some have seen hospital gurneys outside of the room when looking through the peephole, only to see nothing there once the door is opened. Elevators will stop on random floors where there is no one waiting, as if it has been called by a spirit. Emily Morgan Hotel follows the traditional superstition of a lot of the other hotels and does not have a 13th floor. What many people do not know about the hotel is on the 14th floor there isn't a room 1408. The room number stops at 1407 by design, and the next room is the Duke's Suite. When you add the numbers 1408 together, 1408, you get the number 13. Hence the movie 1408, starring John Cusack. Great movie, very scary. Coming in at number 2, we have the Bell Hotel in England. The Bell Hotel was built back in the 15th century. It was first established as an inn way back then and has seen many owners and guests pass through there in its time. Many paranormal investigators have revisited the hotel over the years and truly feel that the site is one of the most haunted in all of Norfolk and the UK. The Bell Hotel itself has been a hostelry since it was established some 16 centuries ago. Some of its period features include wattle and daub walls, Samson's post, Elizabethan wall paintings, a priest's hole, and the original secret passage out of the inn. If you do happen to find yourself at the hotel, avoid the main suite bedroom. It is said that this room in particular is haunted by the ghost of a hooded monk, who either lived or stayed at the hotel in the past, had taken his own life in that very room. Guests have reported the feeling like they're being watched or a sudden unexplained chill in the air. The second most active ghost of the hotel is that of the old landlady Betty Radcliffe. The landlady died when she was pushed out the window of room 10. Her spirit told to never leave the hotel. Guests have reported her walking around at night checking on the hotel as she once did. Some report knocks on their door, but when they open to see who it is, no one is there. These are just the known ghosts of the hotel. After more than 6 centuries in business, who's to know who or what else is trapped within its walls? And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Dragsholm Castle, Denmark. Dragsholm Slot is one of the oldest buildings in Denmark. The original Dragsholm Castle was built around 1215 by the Bishop of Roskilde. During the Middle Ages, the building was modified from the original palace to a fortified castle. During the Count's feud in 1534, it was so strong that it was the only castle on Zealand to withstand the armies of Count Christopher. In connection with the Reformation, Dragsholm was confiscated by the Crown along with all the property of the Catholic Church. As Crown land during the period from 1536 to 1664, Dragsholm Castle was used as a prison for noble and ecclesiastical prisoners. Among the prisoners were a number of rather famous inmates such as Joachim Ronno, that old gem, who was the last Catholic Bishop of Roskilde and ironically once owned the place, and James Hepburn, 4th Earl of Bothwell and 3rd husband to Mary, Queen of Scots. James Hepburn is the first ghost to haunt Dragsholm Castle. He was arrested when his boat had to stop in Denmark due to a storm for not having the correct identification papers. Some of his past misdemeanors caught up with him in the shape of an influential jilted former fiancé whose dowry he had run off with, coupled with the fact that it was known the English were keen to catch up with him regarding the murder of his current wife's second husband. The legend says that Hepburn went insane during the 10 years he was locked inside Dragsholm Castle. He spent the time pacing around his pillar until, when he died in April 1578, he had worn a circular groove in the floor that can still be seen to this day. Even though his body was removed from the castle, his spirit remains behind. The ghost of the Earl is heard rather than seen. People report the sounds of horses' hooves in the courtyard, sometimes accompanied by a fully loaded carriage. At some point in the 1930s, while repairing the plumbing, the workmen made a gruesome discovery. At this point, there had already been sightings of a ghostly maiden around the grounds. The tale goes that she was the daughter of one of the many owners of the castle. It would have been totally unacceptable for a lady of aristocracy to strike up a relationship with a commoner, but the young lady, who may have been Selina Bovels, fell in love with the man who worked at the castle. Their secret affair was rumbled by her father, who in a rage not only locked her in a prison cell in the tower, but went so far as to brick her up inside of the wall. When the plumbers tore down the wall, they discovered her remains. People now make the link that this must be the ghostly maiden. She can often be seen around the grounds searching, possibly for her lost lover. Others have heard crying that they can never place. Could there be more hidden bones around the castle? I won't be staying there to find out.
Number 5. The Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel is as infamous as it is gorgeous. This scenic Colorado hotel isn't just famous for a picturesque view of the Rockies, it's also got quite a reputation for serving as the inspiration for fiction's most famous haunted hotel, the Overlook. Now, it didn't serve as the film set for the Stanley Kubrick film, but it was used for the limited TV series and of course inspired Stephen King's legendary horror novel. In 1974, King and his wife stayed at the hotel, visiting at a time when the hotel was preparing to close down for the season. King states that spending time in such a grandiose location, isolated from the rest of the world, away from other guests and signs of life, hearing this discordant, sad music playing in a giant empty dance hall ignited his imagination. He said he was fired up returning to his room 217, and upon pulling back the curtain to his clawfoot tub, imagined, what if somebody died there? And started writing The Shining that night. Now, Since it's become known as the Overlook, the hotel has developed a real reputation for hauntings, even being dubbed the Disneyland for ghost hunters at one point. Paranormal enthusiasts come to check out everything staying at the Stanley, and the hotel itself encourages this behavior, offering guided tours. Some highlights include, obviously, room 217, the cursed room from the novel, and it's the most requested room in the hotel. Stories go that in the early 1900s, the head housekeeper was blasted through a floor after a gas leak caused an explosion, and they say that her spirit inhabits the room today, and guests report finding help from the afterlife. Luggage unpacked, lights being turned off, I gotta say, that is some room service. They say that almost every room and cranny of the Stanley is haunted in some way. Is it all just legend inspired by the novel, or is truth stranger than fiction? You'd have to book a trip up to the Stanley to find out. Take their Ghost Hunters package when you do, and tell them Top 5 Scary sent you. And if you're looking for more horror content and you just can't wait, you don't have to go anywhere off this page. Click through on Top 5 Scary because we have loads and loads of ghost videos for you to enjoy. Cryptids, aliens, scary stories, pretty much anything scary you can shake a stick at, we've got. So stay subscribed, stay scared, but stay watching this video because we got way more story left to go. Number 4, the Fairmont Banff. Our next entry is one of Canada's most famous haunted hotels, and you know me, I love a local haunt. That's a little pun for you. The gorgeous property is well known internationally, and not just for its stunning views, but apparently because the place is just top to bottom ghost central. Let's take a look at some of the more notable ones that are haunting the property. The most famous specter at the Fairmont is that of the Ghost Bride. That was a Tim Burton movie, wasn't it? Her story takes us back to the late 1920s, and allegedly it goes that a beautiful young bride was dressed in her gown, ready for the ceremony, when something caught her heel, causing her to slip and fall down the hotel stairs, careening downwards, tragically cutting her life short. Since then, hotel staff and guests alike have reported numerous sightings of a weird veiled figure moving up and down the stairs in a long ethereal white gown, or seeing her in the ballroom by herself, dancing alone, waiting for that first dance she never got. Aww. I dance with you, Ghost Bride. The bride is only one of many ghosts though. The Banff doesn't want to give out the room numbers to avoid any trouble, but allegedly a great number of the rooms in the hotel are cursed. One in question is allegedly the site of a brutal crime, and the story has been told and retold countless times over with details swapped around to make it scarier, but it says that a family was all found dead, and since then, guests have reported horrifying things like hearing screams in the middle of the night or finding handprints on the mirror. If you visit the floor the room is supposed to be on, this room will be closed down to keep guests out, although they say it's just for renovations. Go there, check it out, and then decide for yourself if that's all just a cover story.
Coming in at number 3, we have Queen Mary, Long Beach. The RMS Queen Mary is a British ocean liner turned hotel that's known for its many spirits aboard and below deck. Making its maiden voyage in 1936, she eventually served as a transport ship for Allied troops in World War II. Today, this floating haunted hotel calls SoCal home, aka Southern California, because I didn't know we were doing the lingo up in here. SoCal. While converted as a troop carrier during the war, the ship collided with her escort, slicing the HMS Caracal in half. Around 300 people drowned as a result. Throughout the years, staff and guests have reported seeing many different apparitions and have experienced unexplained events. Screams and wails can be heard coming from the boiler room where a young sailor was said to have been severed in half by a door. There have also been reports of a little girl who likes to play games with the living by the swimming pool. The saloon on the Queen Mary is a hotspot for Lady in White sightings, who is said to be a first-class passenger. At least she haunts in style, often being spotted dancing in a long ball gown. Perhaps the most haunted spot in the hotel is located on the infamous B deck, specifically Suite B340. They actually stopped offering the suite because they received an abundance of complaints about paranormal activity. Of course, this drew mass attention to the room, so they now offer a ghost package for those brave enough to spend the night in the most haunted suite on the ship. With its intriguing and checkered past, it's no surprise that the Queen Mary was once labelled by Time magazine as one of the top 10 most haunted places on Earth. In at number 2, we have the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. The Stanley Hotel is perhaps the most infamous haunted hotel in the world, and for a good reason. It's said to be so haunted that author Stephen King based his popular novel The Shining on the colonial revival style hotel, which was later adapted into the hit film starring Jack Nicholson. Should you decide to spend a night at the Stanley Hotel, you'll be spending it among a plethora of spirits that are said to haunt the grounds, and not all of them are human. But let's look back to the hotel's haunted history. It was built by inventor Freeland Oscar Stanley Stanley, who moved to Colorado hoping to relieve his tuberculosis symptoms in 1903. One season later, he was a new man, no longer weak and frail. He was so overjoyed that he decided to build a sophisticated hotel, and in 1908, the Stanley Hotel opened its doors. Stanley lived until the ripe age of 91, but his spirit is said to still roam the halls of the place he loved. His wife, Flora, also has been spotted in the hotel and is known to play the piano. All ghosts play the piano, apparently. Another spirit is that of a housekeeper named Elizabeth Wilson. She was seriously injured on the property in an explosion, but thankfully survived. Her spirit is said to reside in room 217, which happens to be the same room that Stephen King stayed in. The author apparently had a nightmare of his young son being chased around the hotel. On the 4th floor, guests and staff have reported hearing children laughing and playing. There's also a spirit of a little boy named Billy who is known to play with the hair of guests. So the next type of ghost isn't actually that scary, more cute if anything. On the grounds there's a small pet cemetery. People have reported seeing apparitions of a cat and dog roaming around. The Stanley Hotel also has an underground cave system below with a high concentration of minerals that are said to attract spirits. And finally, in at number 1 we have the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Located in the dirty underbelly of LA, the Cecil Hotel is not for the faint of heart. It has housed famous serial killers, a bizarre mystery, and tons of death, but let's start at the beginning. In its glory, the Cecil was the definition of opulence, with a grand marble lobby, stained glass windows, and beautiful statues. But that quickly fell through when it was hit hard by the Great Depression. In 1931, the Cecil had its first of many suicides. The once elegant hotel and the area around it slowly became what we know today as Skid Row. After a string of more suicides, the hotel became a place for people to die. Perhaps the most grim death was when a woman gave birth in the hotel and in a panic, she threw herself out the window. Let's say she did that. I like changing history so that I can keep it in. Elizabeth Short, famously known as the Black Dahlia, was also said to have had a drink in the hotel's lobby days before her gruesome murder. Even more famous, or should I say infamous, people have frequented the Cecil Hotel. In the 1980s, Richard Ramirez, or the Night Stalker, was terrorizing the West Coast, murdering at least 38 people in less than a year. The serial killer called the Cecil home and based his operations out of the hotel. He allegedly even dumped bloody clothes and evidence in the dumpsters behind it. Austrian serial killer Jack Unterweger also resided at the Cecil in the 1990s. After serving time in prison for a murder conviction back in his home country, he checked into the Cecil while working as a journalist. He murdered 3 sex workers and even reported on his crimes until he was caught. The Cecil Hotel found itself at the center of a mystery in 2013 that took the world by storm. The disappearance of Elisa Lam made headlines. The 21-year-old tourist's body was found floating in the hotel's water tank. Her death was ruled accidental and attributed to mental illness, but there are very strange elements to the story that still leave doubt in people's minds. There's security camera footage that shows Elisa in the elevator acting rather strange. She seems to be hiding by pressing her body up against the wall, occasionally peeking out and acting as if someone is in there. Whether you believe her death was accidental, homicide, or paranormal, it's still an incredibly bizarre and haunting story. Although the Cecil Hotel has since been rebranded and has undergone a facelift, there are too many deaths and sinister stories attached to the hotel for it to not be haunted. Coming in at number 5, we have Omni Shoreham Hotel in Washington, D.C. The Omni Shoreham Hotel was built in 1930 by the owner of a construction company. One of the hotel's major financial partners was Henry L. Doherty, who later lived in the hotel with his family but left soon after his daughter died in what is known as the Ghost Suite. Although there is a haunted past with the hotel, it does hold many luxurious events. Franklin D. Roosevelt even held his first inaugural ball here, and many balls have been held here since. When Henry L. Doherty lived at the hotel, he occupied Suite 870. They moved into the hotel with their maid, Juliet Brown. One night at 4 a.m, Juliet woke up feeling unwell. She rang the front desk but unfortunately died before she could speak with anyone. Not long after this happened, Henry's wife and daughter also passed away in the same room. The cause of them passing is unknown. After this unfortunate string of events, Mr. Doherty moved out of the hotel. The apartment was then unoccupied for over 50 years. The Doherty apartment was since renovated into a hotel suite. However, since this was reopened, there have been a number of weird happenings. Guests soon reported hearing faint voices and witnessed doors closing and opening by themselves. Televisions as well as lights would also turn off and on by themselves, strangely all around 4 a.m. at the same time it's believed Juliet passed away. Some occupants also said that they came back to the room with the furniture rearranged. If you do you ever find yourself at this hotel, do not stay in the Doherty suite. Coming in at number 4, we have Admiral Fell Inn in Maryland. The inn has 8 buildings which date back to the late 1700s. Before becoming an inn, the building had many different uses, including a ship chandlery, a vinegar factory, a YMCA, a boarding house for actors, and a sailor's lodging house. In 1900, Fells Point was a rough place. It was full of sailors, mobster hangouts, illegal gambling halls, brothels, and sailors. A Christian boarding house and recreational center then opened, which was called the Anchorage, and the building is now the central structure of the Admiral Fell Inn. In the early 1900s, a lot of death was seen here. Mercy nuns would try to treat wounded sailors in the main building, but there was only so much they could do and many died. In 1985, it was renovated into a 38-room bed and breakfast and renamed the Admiral Fell Inn. 1996 brought upgrades and expanded it into the 80-room hotel that it is today. The inn is considered to be the most haunted place in Maryland, with many sailors even dying from their wounds or taking their own lives here. There may also be a number of mob victims who passed away here due to the dangerous past. One room is particularly dangerous, room 413. This room was the scene of a ghastly murder in 1999. Christopher Jones, an out-of-town guest attending a pharmaceutical convention, was killed by Garry Mick. Some of the hotel's housekeepers often get a strange feeling when they clean the room, and others refuse to go in it at all. Some feel a breeze or a hand resting on their shoulder. Others have experienced sudden cold spots and shadows darting around the room. People have also seen floating sailors sitting where a fire escape once was. Others hear knocking on their doors from butlers who once were. There have been multiple times when the hotel had to be evacuated due to hurricanes nearby. When the hotel was empty and the manager went back in for a last check, they could hear partying from one of the floors, believed to be the old sailors who used to party at the hotel. Maybe if partying with ghosts is what you're looking for, this is the place for you.
Number 3. The Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel was opened in 1909 by the American inventor and entrepreneur Freeland Oscar Stanley. In the years since its opening, it has developed the reputation as being one of the world's most famous and influential haunted hotels, having been described as the Disneyland for ghosts. All throughout the hotel, paranormal activity is reported, with vacuums being turned off or having their plugs torn out of the walls at any given moment. But there are 3 consistent sites of ghost activity on the premises that we will explore. The 4th floor of the hotel was originally a cavernous attic, before eventually being converted into the living quarters for the female employees, their children, and nannies. In the years since, it has been converted into guest rooms, but the spirits of the past are still known to stick around. Guests have reported seeing their closet doors opening and closing on their own, and hearing the sounds of children running around and giggling while they play. In room 428, guests have reported seeing the ghost of a friendly cowboy appearing at the corner of the bed, who is believed to be the spirit of Rocky Mountain Jim Nugent, a guide from the late 1800s who was known for only having one eye after being attacked by a bear. Another haunted location is the concert hall, which was built by Stanley as a gift for his wife Flora, who can often be heard playing her piano late into the night. Another spirit who can be found in the hall is a former employee named Paul, who used to enforce the 11 p.m. curfew, and who now nudges guests and workers who are in the hall late at night, and will sometimes flicker the lights and tell them to get out. Most infamous is room 217, which is apparently haunted by the ghost of a housekeeper named Elizabeth Wilson. She apparently flickers the lights, moves objects, and will even unpack the guest's luggage. She is, however, somewhat old-fashioned, and will literally try and drive a wedge between unwed couples who share the bed, with several couples describing a cold force coming between them in the night, and the man's bags being packed and left by the door in the morning. Although this has never been confirmed, when the movie Dumb and Dumber was filmed in the area, Jim Carrey stayed in room 217 and was so scared by something in the room that he ran out of the room half naked and screaming in the middle of the night. The hotel was on the verge of being closed down until an author and his family stayed at the Stanley in 1974, the day before it closed for the season. They were the only guests, and the large, empty, ornate hotel left them feeling extremely uneasy. When the author and his wife stayed in room 217 that night, he had a vivid nightmare about his son being attacked in the hallways, and when Stephen King awoke, he had the idea for his best-selling novel, The Shining. In the years since the novel's publication and the release of the film adaptation by Stanley Kubrick, the Stanley Hotel has embraced its spooky reputation, offering ghost tours, having a television channel that plays the film on a loop, available for guests, and even constructing an elaborate hedge maze in order to make the hotel more like the fictional Overlook Hotel it inspired. The Stanley Hotel is a must-visit site for paranormal and horror fans that they'll never want to leave. And if they get lost in the hedge maze, they never will. Number 2. Ruthin Castle. The Ruthin Castle in North Wales was built built in the early 1200s by Edward I to replace the wooden fortress that stood in its place before, as a gift to the king's loyal allies, eventually ending up in the hands of Reginald de Grey as a reward for helping Edward assemble the finest army in the world. The modern castle was built within the original castle's ruins in 1826, before being sold to be used as a hospital in 1923 and eventually being converted into a hotel in the 1960s. Some of the most famous figures that have stayed in the castle over the course of its long and storied history include King Henry VII and his daughter Mary, making this a location that you can stay in that once housed the original and authentic Bloody Mary. Although, as always, summoning her in a darkened room is not recommended. One of the most haunted rooms in the hotel is room 222, where several guests have reported sudden and extreme drops in temperature, as well as hearing slamming doors and tapping sounds all around the room. Another consistent tale is the little girl who is often seen at night knocking on guests' doors and running through the halls and on the roof while giggling. Also commonly cited is a soldier, supposedly one who died defending the castle while serving in King Edward's army, who can be seen wandering the castle grounds dressed in full medieval armor. However, the most infamous apparition is the ghost of Reginald de Grey's wife, Lady Grey. She apparently caught her husband having an affair and in a jealous rage dispatched the mistress with an axe. She was sentenced to death, and her body was not allowed to be buried on consecrated grounds and was instead buried outside the castle walls. Perhaps due to not being able to receive a proper burial, many guests and employees have reported seeing Lady Grey wandering the castle grounds, as well as the rooms on the upper floor and in the banquet hall, still carrying her axe. Despite its creepy history, this hotel is known for treating its guests like royalty, providing them with a variety of different rooms at different price points and having a world-class spa, as well as the ability to participate in a medieval banquet and tours of the grounds, the dungeons, the drowning pool, and the whipping pit, making this one castle you won't mind being laid siege in. Number 1. The Emily Morgan Hotel. Located in the American city of San Antonio, Texas, this Gothic-style building, built in 1924, was originally a medical center with its own hospital, morgue, crematorium, and psych ward. It operated in this capacity until it closed in 1976 and was eventually converted and reopened as a hotel in 1984. Although no longer a hospital, some guests have reported hearing hospital carts being wheeled up and down the halls and smelling the distinct smell of antiseptic on the 14th floor. On the 7th floor, where the psych ward operated, there are reports of a ghost bride who was known to wander the halls and wake guests with terrifying screams. In the basement, which used to house the crematorium, employees report the smell of burning flesh and the apparition of glowing floating orbs, as well as disembodied voices crying out in pain. If this isn't ghostly enough, you can look out the window and see another notoriously haunted building, as the Alamo is located directly across the street. With all the local history, you will never want to leave once you receive some of that Texas hospitality. Staying the night in a haunted hotel sounds like a stressful experience, but it still sounds preferable to staying at the Econo Lodge Motel. Number 5. The Banff Springs Hotel. First opening in 1888, nestled in Canada's Rocky Mountains, the Banff Springs Hotel has played host to a variety of guests over the years, not all of them mortal beings. The Banff Springs Hotel is known for its variety of ghosts, who allegedly haunt its halls, the most benign of which is Sam the Bellman. Sam McCauley was an old man from Scotland who came to Canada and became the head bellman at the Banff Springs. Sam loved his job and often joked that he would work at the hotel forever, even refusing to retire until his death in 1975. In the years since, several guests have reported a bellman in an antiquated uniform, matching Sam's description, wandering the halls, asking about their stay, and even helping guests who are locked out of their rooms. Less wholesome is the famous Phantom Bride, who according to legend was married at the hotel in the early 30s. Apparently, before the wedding reception, the bride was making her way up the large marble staircase leading to the Cascade Ballroom to join her husband, who was waiting at the top. She tripped on her own dress and fell down the stairs, making her husband a widower in the process. There have been tales of the bride haunting the hotel ever since, with strange crying noises being heard in the empty bridal suite, and reports of a phantom bride dancing alone in the ballroom or making her way up the fatal staircase. The most disturbing of the hauntings is the events that took place in room 873. According to legend, a man was staying with his wife and daughter in the room when he went mad and ended the lives of all involved. In the years since, the ghosts of the child and her mother have apparently remained in the room, with guests being awoken by violent screams and finding bloody handprints on the mirror that the maids could not manage to wash off. The reports got so numerous gross and disturbing that the hotel management sealed off the room, making it unavailable for guests. However, despite the numerous supernatural specters you may encounter, the hotel's beautiful architecture and services, as well as the scenic mountain views and the amazing skiing available in Banff, will make you never want to leave. Number 4. The Omni Mount Washington Hotel. Located in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, the Mount Washington Hotel was built in 1902 by Joseph Stickney. Sadly, soon after the hotel was built, Joseph passed away, being survived by his wife, Carolyn. Carolyn eventually remarried to a French prince, but the newly minted princess continued to spend her summers at the luxurious hotel, always staying in her personal suite, room 314. In the years since Princess Carolyn's death, there have been several reported instances from guests and staff alike about seeing the princess sitting at the foot of the bed. The following story from one of the former employees is particularly chilling. In 1997, I was working as a housekeeper and had to clean room number 314, the princess's room. I went to service the room that newlyweds were staying in, and I knocked on the door and there was no answer. I opened the door, went in, and there was a little girl sleeping on the bed. Immediately, I went to the hallway to see my inspector and told her I couldn't clean the room because a little girl was sleeping. She said that was odd because the guests were newlyweds and nobody else was registered. She asked me to leave a note that I was coming back in an hour to service the room. I went back in the room to leave the note by the table. I walked in the room quietly to not wake the little girl up. When I looked at the bed, instead of a little girl, there was a woman staring right at me with the most scary smile on her face. She had black hair and was wearing a white dress. I got chills down my spine and I just stood there, frozen. She sat on the bed and kept staring at me. I ran out of the room and told my friend, who was also a housekeeper. We both went back in the room and there was no one there. I still have a hard time remembering that incident, and I get chills every time I speak about it. I have many friends that have worked there, and I heard a lot of scary things that happened. Oh, the day before this happened, my friend and I took pictures of ourselves on the princess's bed. Everybody tells me that I made her upset by doing that. There have also been tales of other areas of the hotel playing host to paranormal activity, such as this story of the ballroom. As I walked into the ballroom late one evening on a night where there was no performers, I heard the faint sounds of an orchestra playing. I thought a rehearsal was going on, and I went to see who it was. There was no one there. No one. As I walked away from the side of the stage, the lights suddenly went out, and the music got louder. It was surreal and very, very scary. I ran to the light switch and saw that it had been turned off. I turned it back on, and the lights went on for a second, and then the switch turned down on its own. The entire time, the music kept playing. I ran out and found security and told them what happened. They went in to investigate and found nothing. No music and no problem with the lights. Despite the various ghosts, the Mount Washington Resort provides guests with stunning views of the mountains and the famously beautiful foliage of the White Mountain National Forest. This combined with the amazing ski opportunities, the on-site golf course, and the fact that it has played host to several famous guests, including 3 US presidents and Thomas Edison, will make your trip a memorable vacation that you'll never want to leave.
Number 3. The Crescent Hotel. If you're ever making your way through Arkansas, you simply have to stop off at the Crescent Hotel. It's been called the Grand Old Lady of the Ozarks due to its gorgeous old Gothic design and wonderful mountaintop view. It's kind of a shame almost that such a pretty place has such a morbid, haunted history, but that seems to be a running theme with all these delightful old hotels. The more beautiful they are, the more haunted you are. Its problems began during its construction. A construction worker named Michael plunged to his death from the roof, fatally landing in room 218. Unsurprisingly, since then, that room is said to be haunted, with guests reporting bizarre noises being heard from inside. And this is far from the only cursed tale of this hotel though. Before it found a new life as a hotel, the Crescent was a alternative clinic of sorts, run by a charismatic charlatan by the name of Norman Baker, who claimed that the waters of the nearby springs were so refreshing and so restorative that they could cure any ailment you might have. This might surprise you, but this was not true, as Baker did not have even the most minute amount of medical training. He was just a con man with a winning smile and a bunch of $5 words. Patients would check in expecting to be cured for cancer. That was his main operation. He said it could cure cancer. And his cancer cure was just an injection of corn silk and water, which doesn't do anything. Baker would find himself arrested in 1949, but unfortunately for the victims of his scams, their souls wouldn't find peace just yet. All throughout the hotel, guests report ghostly figures, seeing floating orbs passing through the halls, hearing screams, laughters, and strange bumps in the night. One particularly notable ghost around the Crescent is named Theodora, who was once one of the nurses employed there. Well, nurses. They say she hates mess, and many guests report that they'll discover their belongings have been reorganized for them. I love hearing stories about these helpful ghosts that don't haunt you, they just pack up your stuff for you. Among the cutest stories of spirits, however, is reports of a ghost cat named Morris, who guests claim they can hear purring or feeling a warm sensation on their lap or leg. Oh, the little ghost kitty wants some scritches? I guess he ran out of 9 lives, guess they're not quite enough. I hope there's some meow mix up in the afterlife. Number 2, the Langham. The Langham Hotel is one of the most famous hotels in England. It's gorgeous and renowned, and it's entertained all manner of famous guests over the many years of its service, and if you believe the rumors, might be entertaining them still if their spirits are still lingering onwards. Built in 1865, is it any wonder now that this hotel is a haunting ground for restless spirits? One of the more reported ghosts to come out of the Langham Hotel is that of a man decked out in Victorian evening wear, seemingly trapped inside room 333. He appears during October, unable to move on from his final resting spot. If you ask the locals, they'll tell you a story of how years and years past, a doctor and his new wife checked into the Langham for their honeymoon. No one seems to agree on what transpired or why this happened, but what's known is that something inside the doctor snapped, and he claimed the life of his new bride, and overcome with grief, took his own life as well, and since then has been unwilling or unable to leave. In 1973, a BBC journalist staying in the room woke up one night in October and claims he saw a fluorescent hovering ball of pure light above him in the room, which then materialized as this man in front of him. The man appeared in Victorian era attire, then pointed ominously at the reporter, who fled the room. Yeah, I would probably do the exact same thing, to be completely frank. It's very refreshing to hear someone act so rationally towards a ghost. Guests sometimes complain of this room feeling overwhelmingly hot or lights flickering on and off during the middle of the night. You know, classic poltergeist behavior. The Victorian doctor is far from the only ghost said to reside in the hotel. Alongside Napoleon III, a butler, and a man in a powdered wig are all repeat offenders. So if you head on up to the Langham, keep an eye out for those beloved guests. And number 1, Myrtles Plantation. Our final entry is Myrtles Plantation, said to be one of the most haunted buildings in the entire United States. It's home to many ghost stories and legends stemming from a violent, sordid, unpleasant past. The plantation was first built in 1796, where it traded hands several times between a number of wealthy families. Our first story of haunting comes from 1834, when it was owned by Clark Woodruff, a prestigious judge and, well, also a slave owner. Of his slaves, one was named Chloe, who was a particular target of Woodruff's unimaginable cruelty. She tried to protect herself by eavesdropping and learning what she could do to alter her behavior, but unfortunately, this would just serve as a punishment, as when Woodruff learned she was eavesdropping on him, he had her ears cut off, and then made her wear a green head wrap to not have to look at what he had done. He sounds like a really lovely guy. Legend states that to strike back, Chloe poisoned a cake the Woodruffs were going to eat at a party. And weirdly, there's some differing reports and versions of this story change the intent. Sometimes Chloe was looking to get rid of them, sometimes she just wanted to make them sick to teach them a lesson. Well, the dosage was lethal, and Mrs. Woodruff and the rest of the family, save for Mr. Woodruff, were all lethally poisoned. As a retaliation, Chloe was hanged on the property. Some believe that she still haunts the ground and that her ghost can be seen, still sporting that green head wrap. The next owners would not fare much better. The next owner was a wealthy family, the Winters. Mr. Winter was a teacher, and one day a stranger riding by came out and fired at Mr. Winter fatally, where he staggered up the stairs to breathe his last. Visitors say that you can still hear his forceful stomps up the stairs as he attempted to get help. The plantation harbors a dark history, but has remained a popular spot for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts to go and stay the night to see what they can find.